De-aged to a baby. It's time for comic book shenanigans. Who's getting de-aged today? Why, it's Magneto. Time for baby Magneto. This plot line is fascinating not just because of how it happened, and it being an opportunity to examine the changes to the character over time, but also because of how big of a way it came back when its inception was very much a blip. Magneto being de-aged has come up on this channel because it came up during our talks of Trial of Magneto, which we were discussing because of the X-Men 97 adaptation, because it took some elements from that plot line, a decent amount of elements. And Uncanny X-Men 200, which is the Trial of Magneto issue, there's a line in it which references the fact that he had been de-aged to a baby. And it's always amused me because it's this big, huge trial. It happens after this very uncomfortable moment, and then it's just wham. As I was saying, at that time, Magneto was reduced to infancy, returned to a state of grace. His life can be said to have begun again. The man that was, at that moment, ceased to exist. In effect, he died, which is of course the ultimate penalty for any crime. Take notes. Want to escape your crime? De-age to a baby. I love it when the whole world outside your window thing that Marvel has going on collides with the outlandishness of their in-universe workings. It's at its most fun when the universe is able to percolate inside of its own happenings. You get really fun moments like that. So just how did Magneto become a baby? I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's go back and explore that storyline. For that, we need to cast back the Defenders. Oh yes, Magneto was not even de-aged in the book he was most associated with, so for me that adds an extra chuckle-worthy layer to what's going on here. This will be addressed years later in X-Men, in X-Men 104. Thankfully, that issue has a handy-dandy editor's note that tells you to go back to Defenders 16. Wild things were happening over in the Defenders. We're actually going to pop back to issue 15 first. For some setup, we want full baby Magneto context. We want to experience all the richness. Defenders number 15 was published in June of 1974. The story was Panic Beneath the Earth, even though the cover says Panic at the Earth's Core. The point is we're panicking. This story was written by Len Wein, with pencils by Sal Buscema, inks Klaus Janson, colors Glynis Wein, Len Wein's wife. The cover is also full of lies. It promises the Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Namor versus the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. There's no Namor in this issue. I feel cheated. Instead, we're gonna have Nighthawk, who is officially joining the team to replace Valkyrie, who is also in this issue, who is trying to quit. Just when she thought she was out, they pulled her back in. Professor X, who isn't on the team, is also involved. He calls them for help. The story starts with Doctor Strange giving Nighthawk a tour. It always sticks with me because the tone of the narration box is a little odd to me. Past time for a rainy afternoon. A personally guided tour of the fabulous Sanctum Sanctorum of the man called Doctor Strange, Master of the Mystic Arts. And you lucky devil, are just in time to get in on the end of it. That may not sound like much, but Tiger, if you knew what the rest of Doc's place looks like. Why is the tiger there? Stop hitting on me, narration box. Who let MJ in the narration booth? One thing we're setting up here is that Nighthawk has a cool new outfit, which will matter, particularly the jetpack under his cape, which seems like a huge hazard, but with superhero costume logic, we'll take it. It's a jetpack. It's cool. Before Valkyrie can leave, Professor X reaches out and contacts Doctor Strange. He's saying he needs help. The X-Men are on a secret mission, and he's found a potentially world-ending menace. So it's the Defenders on deck. How could ones who call themselves Earth's Defenders possibly refuse such a request, good Professor? Of course we will stand at your side. Okay, we gotta meet at New Mexico's Carlsbad Caverns. Sounds good. Steven summons the Hulk, and then they're off to New Mexico. And what's in New Mexico, aside from a Cyclops that provides this issue's first action scene? Why, it's Magneto. See, my friends, is it not as Magneto has promised you? Look at them, groveling at our feet, as all the world shall soon grovel before us, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I love the era when the word evil is part of the title. There is no talking your way out of that association. Oh, so what Brotherhood was it again? Now, Magneto's big plan here involves creating some kind of ultimate mutant. Creating mutants was a thing that Magneto did for a period of time, just cobbling them together with genetics and manipulation. But first, there's a lengthy explanation as to how he returned, because it's a common reoccurring thing that Magneto will be put in some kind of situation where he seems like he should be gone for good, and then they'll have to explain how he got out of it. The Avengers had trapped him in the Earth's core, so there's a huge, this is how I left the Earth's core. And when he came up in New Mexico, he discovered the remains of an ancient civilization, machines, books, and I found libraries, books, written in a language that was surely never of this earth. For a time, I stayed in the cavern, deciphering the language, studying the books, until I discovered a secret so spectacular I could not bear to keep it only to myself. I returned to the surface then, and sought out the only beings I deemed worthy of sharing my secret with me. The untouchable Unis, the malevolent mastermind, the unbeatable Blob, who didn't get an alliteration, all mutants like myself. Evil mutants born. I wish I was stoic and mature enough to be able to say Unis the Untouchable without at least a quirk of a smile, but I'm not there yet. Magneto highlights Lorelei, another mutant he created, and there's a whole Pygmalion reference, but will he care more about Alpha, the ultimate mutant? The rest of issue 15 is a big battle between the Defenders featuring Charles and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Highlights include Doctor Strange casting Mirror Image to defeat Mastermind, and Charles using Nighthawk's jetpack, See It Matter, to have him slam into Lorelei to stop her singing, hence nullifying her powers. The issue ends with the ultimate mutant leaving his giant gestation tube. Issue 16, behold Alpha, the ultimate mutant. What's really interesting about this cover is once you've read this issue, you can tell that Alpha is on here twice, and there's still no Namor here. Stop teasing me. Issue 16 gives us Alpha, who is a powerful mutant. I'm putting that in quotes because there's some questions there. I'm not sure if he would still have the abilities he has just being an alien, but Magneto calls him the ultimate mutant, so that's what we're going with. He did something to the genes, it's splicey splice. Doctor Strange initially blasts Alpha and gets called out for by Magneto and Charles, which is amusing. Alpha's powers are kind of vague. He's strong. He can do big force fields. He can teleport. He'll develop stronger and stronger telekinetic abilities. Eventually, he'll be able to read souls. After escaping the Xmen, Magneto takes him to the UN. By the eyes of Allah, it is Magneto. Again. It's the again that gets me. Magneto can't leave the UN alone. Then, as the Master of Magnetism ascends to the podium, for far too long, we who are Homo superior have lived in the shadows of Homo sapiens, when our very designation proclaims we are your betters. But never again shall we suffer such indignity. Never again after today. We have come to demand what you sniveling, simpering humans have for so many years denied us. We have come to demand our birthright. We want the world, and we want it now. Throughout all of this, Alpha has been gaining more and more awareness, and is starting to have impulses to be good. He doesn't want to hurt people. He's also developing a bigger and bigger head. And if you know about the rules of science fiction and coming from an advanced society or the future in this time period, you'll know that a bigger head means bigger brains and stronger telekinetic/telepathic abilities. It's meant to be a visual showing that you've advanced so far that the brains and the abilities cannot be contained. Your very cranium needs to expand to hold them. It's appropriate that my hands are leaving the screen for this. So it's not exactly a hard sell by the end when Professor X says, it's Magneto who's actually evil. Alpha, you oppose us because Magneto has told you we are evil. Yet justice can seem evil when described by someone evil. I tell you Magneto is the menace here, and dare him to deny it. I double dog dare you. Your argument intrigues me, human. Look at Magneto there trying to convince him that he's lying. It's too late. Don't you see how big his head is? Alpha, the ultimate mutant, weighs their souls against each other and finds the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants wanting. Magneto, you have lied to me. Look at his face, Magneto. You've got to do something. Shut up, Mastermind, and let me handle this. Yes, Alpha, I lied to you. Good start. But for your own good. You were born an emotional infant. You couldn't be expected to understand the reasons for our actions, or the vicious persecution that forced us to them. Alpha doesn't want to hear it, and says no, they're like children. And so he turns the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants into babies.
Huh? Big Head Man is gone. Flew away like Bright Star. Hulk doesn't understand.
Nor do you have to, my emerald friend. You need only know this. A godling passed among us today, and in passing left behind a most precious gift. After all, how many lost souls are there who receive a second chance at life? Next issue, a Defender departs. Oh, is it Valkyrie finally? A second Defender follows, and those who remain must face Luke Cage, Power Man. If this is what Alpha did, I'm concerned what would have happened if they'd had to fight Sigma, the ultimate mutant. So cringe. So worth it. Now, Magneto stays a baby for more time than one would expect, a period of years. It ends in X-Men 104, which is in 1977. And we're gonna hop right to the re-aging at that point. He's gonna show up and he's gonna fight the new roster of X-Men, because by that point, it's gonna be post the sort of relaunch with giant-sized X-Men with the new shake-up lineup, but were also pre-Magneto's changes of heart. This story is The Gentleman's Name is Magneto. It's written by Chris Claremont, pencils Dave Cockrum, inks Sam Granger, colors A. Yankees. The A stands for Andrew. I had to know. This issue is also the first appearance of Muir Island. You are going to die here, mutants, and not all your powers nor your skills can save you from my wrath. Look on me, X-Men, for I am your oldest, deadliest foe, master of the Legion of Evil Mutants, and soon to be lord of all the world. I am Magneto. Whoa, Legion of Evil? I signed up for a Brotherhood of Evil, thank you very much. We learned from Jamie Madrox, aka Multiple Man, that Magneto was being kept in a cell on the island and had been since he was turned into a baby. Look, they gave him a cute teddy bear and clothes in his color scheme. Eric the Red, who broke in with Havoc and Polaris, was the one who re-aged him in seconds so that they could ally together. They talked all day. Eric suggested an alliance against the X-Men, a two-pronged attack. I sound like this because I'm Multiple Man and he's injured. Magneto was furious, humiliated at being a baby in Xavier's hands. He wanted vengeance. Magneto is in full mwahaha villain mode in this, and he also, as mentioned, takes on the new lineup, which for this issue was Colossus, Nightcrawler, Storm, Banshee, Cyclops shows up later on. Man for man, they were stronger than the old X-Men, yet I've beaten them all, except for Cyclops. This issue basically gets Magneto back on the playing field, and if you were worried about the others, the rest of the Brotherhood, who were also babies, they explain how they were re-aged over in the Champion 17. It's very much Eric the Red re-aged us too, but by accident, and after all that, well, we decided that was enough villainy for us, for now. As for Magneto, aside from some mentions that he was a baby and the scaling at his age, it doesn't come up too much. It's for the most part left alone. It was a thing that happened. Then the 90s arrived and it became a huge plot point. X-Men number 2, 1991. Magneto tripping out on Asteroid M, capturing some of the X-Men, altering their genetics to make them loyal to him. The way that genetic alteration is going to work in this story is questionable and very much conflated with behavior modification. It even mentions behavior modification at one point, but then claims you can do it through your genes. Some people take it as concerning and that the story has some dangerous implications for eugenics and playing with genetics. Personally, I just think that some ideas conflated and combined in a way that doesn't fully work. Now, the story in question is Firestorm. It's written by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. It has Lee on pencils, inks are by Scott Williams, and the colors are by Joe Rosas. Magneto's chest strategically on display on the cover. Cabled, tentacle-looking things everywhere, encompassing Xavier. Magneto triumphant. What's going on here is that this era is looking to move Magneto back into a more extreme level of villainy, nearing psychotic at points. And they need to do something to make this happen, since over time, especially in the 80s onward, Magneto had begun to move more and more into an anti-hero type role. His history was there, but he had become more nuanced over time. It was quite the process though. But by this point in the 90s, a lot had happened there. So a big shakeup would be needed to move him away from that. The solution was found in reimagining / recontextualizing his time as a baby. So we set the scene on Asteroid M, where he's got some of those captured X-Men. He's taken a chunk from the Earth with Charles and Moira on it to confront them. He has questions that can only be answered in the void of space. I have found some intriguing anomalies in my DNA matrix. I was wondering what you might tell me about it. I haven't the foggiest notion what you're talking about. I hope that's true, because we were friends once, and when one friend betrays the other's trust, it leaves a wound that never truly heals. Cast your minds back, both of you, to my earliest incarnation and that regrettable confrontation in the United Nations with a mutant of my own creation, which resulted in my being reduced to a state of infancy. He needs a drink for this. Also, look at that gorgeous editor's note. They even drew Alpha in there, even though the speech bubble is blocking off part of his gargantuan head. I love that it's a consistent character detail that Magneto has had white hair since being a child. You also get to see the handoff in this issue, which we didn't see before. But there's no dialogue between Charles and Moira, so you don't get to see what the pitch was. Hi Moira, here's baby Magneto, and the others. I hope you're not doing anything. The question is, what occurred during the months I was in your care, Moira? I didn't ken what you mean. That's a pity. Magneto is convinced that Moira tampered with him him, specifically with his mind. Now, while what they imply this could have done is suspect, he's then also not wrong. She did tamper with him. She went all up in his genetics. He gathers them all in the viewing room so that it can be as dramatic as possible as she starts to explain. So what she explains here is that she was trying to modify his genetic matrix to do what she explains at this point is eliminate an instability. The idea was that his powers were so much that utilizing them was rendering him unstable. They're gonna hit that a bit harder later on, but the idea behind it also is that she's trying to find a way to help her son Proteus. It's actually a moment that also works pretty well with Moira's later retcon. Either way, it's really poorly received by Magneto. How seductively noble, an end that surely justified any means, no matter how foul. Who gave you the right to play God with my soul? By the eternal, by tinkering with the foundation of my being, you took from me the dimensions of moral choice. Every decision I've made since my rebirth, now suspect thanks to you. Every fiber of my being thrown into chaos. How else did you tinker, Doctor? Did it amuse you to see how easily I might be manipulated? It wasn't like that. Of course not. You worked for the betterment of the world and the race. I heard those same rationales as a boy in the Auschwitz death camp from Dr. Joseph Mengele himself. Oh, you can see the spit lines. Too much detail. Magneto also won't stop calling Moira a woman this issue and demanding that she break Charles for him. She's also all encased in metal in these panels just so he can suffocate her if he wants to. There's a lot of dramatic Moira manhandling in these issues. Magneto is not okay with what occurred, which is understandable. He was messed with on a genetic level. But here's where they start talking about it as behavior modification. Like she went in and tweaked some genes and that made him good, which doesn't fully work. They do push back against this in issue 3, but not because they say it wouldn't work that way, but because he's just so strong-minded. His powers, he was always going to make the decisions he was going to make. Moira says that her process was a failure because it would only be effective if the person never used their mutant powers, because the structures of mind and body had to be aligned a certain specific way for those powers to operate. And he has such a strong will that no matter how deeply brainwashed, the use of powers would always undo it. So were you trying to brainwash him or not? This is just making it worse. But what she's trying to say is that he made the choices that he was always going to make regardless. Yeah, this is an odd plot point, and it's gonna have lingering impact. We're gonna have a bit more of an unhinged Magneto for a period of the 90s. It's gonna eventually lead to Onslaught with some trace back directly to this moment, which then means they're tracing it back to baby Magneto and the Defenders. This is one of those kind of plot lines where it's very much like, this was a moment, this was a thing that happened. Are you not entertained? I was definitely entertained. Was it questionable? Yes, highly. I'm curious as to your take on this. What do you take from this and what it was meant to convey? Do you think it worked? Do you just want to think about Baby Magneto from A versus X babies? As for the saga of Baby Magneto, this is pretty much the crux. Magneto would be de-aged at various points, but not to this extent, and there'd be clones and other things involved. It could be inferred potentially as the source of the schism in Hawk's box, which is shown on one of the timelines and the diagrams, but that could be just an inference. Time of recording, that's pretty much where it sits, but you never know. It could be back already, or it could be a little reference snuck in here and there. Let me know. I was kind of expecting a nod to it in Resurrection of Magneto. I mean, that story has an I am power, men call me Magneto callback to the None Shall Survive storyline way back in the 60s. Let's just de-age into a baby again. Why not? This time without the genetic tampering. He does look younger post-resurrection. Maybe this is so they don't have to reference the baby thing again. If they have done so at some point in the Krakoan era and I missed it, let me know. You know I'll be thrilled to talk about Baby Magneto again. What do you think of this moment? A fun plot point that was eventually given a bit more weight and gravitas? A silly thing that was best left behind and then got a bit too dark and edgy? Something else entirely? Your thoughts? I want to hear them. Put them down below. And while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.